Hi, my name is Stanley K. Feinberg. I was born February 6th, 1928, in Canton, Ohio, in President McKinley's home. Now you want me to start? Okay. Um, Interesting that President McKinley, his home, was right across the street from the high school that I eventually ended up going to, which was also the high school my mother went to. 25 years, I believe, 20 to 25 years before that. My father was born in London, England. They left, the Feinberg family left, was it Lithuania or Latvia? Left that country, and most of them stopped off in England on their way to Canada. Some of the family branched out and went to South Africa. That part of the family we have lost touch with. The part of the family that went to England and then on to Canada is the family that has been closest to us. My mother was actually born in Lodz. I think it was Poland at the time. It might have been Russia, but I think it was Poland at the time, in Lodz. And she left when she was 2 years old, came over to Canton, Ohio, because there was some family there. My father, in the meantime, was born in London. He lived there for 2 years. They moved to Canada, and they settled in a little town about 100 miles north of Toronto called Peterborough. And the family, which was made up of a number of boys and girls, lived in Peterborough. My dad lived there until the 5th or 6th grade, when he had to leave school and go out and start working to bring in a little money for the family. After a few years there, the family moved to Toronto, where he lived and worked. My grandfather was a shoemaker, and my father did different kinds of jobs, and some of them were associated with shoes. He got into that business. My mother, in the meantime, was growing up in Canton, Ohio. The family first had a little ice cream store, little ice cream confectionery store, and she worked there while she was a young girl. When she went to high school, she ended up going to Canton McKinley High School when it opened up, I think, in 1919. Eventually, I went to that school also in 1940, about 1941. I had one teacher who also was a teacher of my mother. So the two of us had the same teacher. I think she was an American history teacher. And she asked me one day, she was looking at my records, and she asked me if I was related to the Strakowski that I had put on my paper. I said, yes, she's my mother. She said, I taught her in 1920 or 21. My dad was doing some work for some shoe stores, and my mother was on vacation because we also had some relatives in Toronto, Canada on my mother's side, and she was visiting in Canada in the early 20s, and a common friend introduced the two of them. So that's how my father and mother met. They met in Canada. They fell in love. I believe they got married in 1925 or 1926. My dad moved to Canton, Ohio, where He became a manager for a large shoe firm, and he moved around 3, 4, 5, 6 times because they'd always put him into a new store that opened up because he was a hustler and a go-getter, good promoter, and he ran a pretty good shop. So he did that for the first 5 or 10 years that they were married. My grandfather on my mother's side, who started a soft drink business in 1909, he and my grandmother used to bottle the soft drinks by hand themselves, with a little hand machine, and they make up a couple of cases of pop, and they go out and sell it by horse and buggy. Now, he had the chance of going, he also knew something about the so-called schmata business, which is clothing. He had an opportunity to go into the dry goods business or the soft drink business. And I used to kid him until he passed away that why didn't he go into the soft drink business, into the dry goods business, because the dry goods business was a lot easier physically than picking up a case of pop, which weighed about 50 or 60 pounds. And we used to laugh about that. I kidded him because the chances are, since he was fairly successful in the soft drink business, if he had been just as successful in the dry goods business, we could have been in a department store lifting up clothing and dresses and suits and stuff instead of those heavy old cases of pop. About 1933 to 35, my dad heard about a new soft drink coming on the market called Pepsi Cola, called up my grandfather and said, this is something you should get into. It just so happens that he already had heard about it, and the Pepsi Cola company at that particular time was going around the country looking for people to invest in a soft drink franchise. Investing in those days was you put in $5 and you put in your time and effort, and that was about it. So my grandfather said that he would go into the soft drink business if my father would come in and help out. There would be a struggle at first, like it is with most things, but the prospects looked promising. So that's what my dad did. About 1935, I believe, he went in with my grandfather and moved to Canton, and that's how we got into the soft drink business. My grandfather passed away when I was 13, so that was 1941. My dad stayed into the business. There was, my grandfather had a son and 2 daughters. All 3 of them were in the business. He had 3 daughters, of course, my mother, but 2 daughters that still weren't married, and they were all helped out in the business. I finished high school at Canton McKinley High, and I went into the service. When I came back, which was, the war was over when I was drafted. I spent 18 months to 2 years in the service. When I came back, must have been 47, 48. My dad decided to go into business for himself. And there was a few franchises available, and the one in Omaha looked the most promising, had the largest population base, and was in dire needs of somebody doing some real work. So that's what we did. I was going to college then. I stopped my college at my junior year and went to help my dad in Omaha, Nebraska. A little background on that. When we came to Omaha, we bought the Pepsi franchise. I believe it was under Harding's Ice Cream. I think that was it. Harding's Ice Cream owned it, or Seal Test. Harding's Seal Test Ice Cream, I think it was. They had it as an aside because their main business was milk and ice cream. I think at that particular time there was 13 little soft drink companies in the greater Omaha area, of which Coke and 7-Up did the major portion of the business. We started out, we were at 1423 North 18th Street. Boy, never thought I'd remember that. 1423 North 18th Street. That's where the little plant was. And that's where we went to work. My dad and I used to get up. We got up at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. We were the first ones at the plant to open up. We only had a few employees at that particular time, a few route salesmen. The business was, I think we were in last place. There was 13 companies. I think we were 13th in size. We'd get to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we didn't come home until everything was done. That was about 7 o'clock, maybe 8 o'clock at night. Proudly I say that the first 3 years that I was in Omaha, my dad and I didn't take one day off. 7 days a week, 3 years in a row. After 3 years, my dad gave me $5 a week. $5 a week for incidentals. And we didn't take any other money out of the business. Poured it all back in. My dad was a good promoter. He was a good merchandiser, and he started doing some of those things, put those things into place into the soft drink business. And we had contests, we had this, we had that, everything to try to get Pepsi recognized, move it around, get it into new accounts, and that's how we started to grow. I think we had 3, if I remember, we had 3 route salesmen at the time. That sounds about right. I think we had 3 route salesmen. We had a large territory at Greater Omaha. We went as far west as Columbus and Albion, Nebraska. We went to east, about halfway to Des Moines. We even had one county in Missouri that was part of our territory. So we had a lot of territory. Eventually, we ended up, as the years went by, we ended up as a dominant soft drink in Omaha, Nebraska. We were not only number 1, but Pepsi-Cola sold more soft drinks than all the other soft drinks in Omaha combined. And one of the few cities, franchises in the United States that had that kind of dominance as far as acceptorialship in our franchise. I think we ended up with about 55 actual route salesmen out day in and day out. So from 3 to 55, I think it was 56. I'd like to talk about my grandparents, first on my dad's side. My grandmother, who I was lucky enough to know, and my grandfather, whose name was Sam. My grandmother on my father's side was named Shana. And she really was pretty. I can remember her. I also remember her coming to our house one time, and she brought her own pots and pans. That's how kosher she was. own pots and pans all the way from Toronto, Ontario to Canton, Ohio. And my mother, we kept kosher. Mother kept kosher, and she still brought her own pots and pans. She wouldn't eat on anything except her own pots and pans. But she was a great lady. I loved her. She had a twinkle in her eye, and she was just as sharp as a tack. And when she gave you that twinkle and squinted her face up and hugged you and squeezed you, boy, I'm telling you, it's worth $1 million. 79 years later, I still remember the twinkle in her eye and squeezing and hugging you. And my grandfather, Sam, who was a shoemaker, was just a nice guy, quiet. Didn't get a chance because my grandmother was, she was number one, boy. She was some lady. And interestingly enough, a very bright family. One of Dad's brothers, Joe, was the youngest at the time he graduated college in Canada. He was the youngest graduate of college in the country of Canada at that particular time. I think he graduated when he was 16 or 17 years old. Another of my dad's older brothers, Charles, he also didn't go past the 5th or 6th grade. He ended up being the world's #1 collector of Walt Whitman. The #1 collector of Walt Whitman. And I think he ended up giving the collection to the Ben, what's the name of that place in Washington, D.C. that collects, where you put all that stuff? Smithsonian. I think he ended up donating it to the Smithsonian. Anyway, he had another brother that could read a book, and 5 years later, he could tell you what was in that book. He could tell you what was on page 14. He had a photographic memory. The man could remember everything. Just a bright family. And every one of them was brought through not only for their father and mother, of course, but the mother was the dominant force in that family. And they were brought up with good manners and decent people and just straight shooters all the way through. Just great family. On my mother's side, my grandmother and grandfather, they came from Poland. My mother, as I said, was born in Lodz. The marriage was arranged. My mother's mother, whom we as kids used to call Bub, we lived right across the street from in Canton, Ohio, when we were growing up. And I was crazy about my grandmother. One of the reasons I was crazy about my grandmother is because I used to eat and love everything she made. My grandmother, when she made challah, matzo balls, gefilte fish, almost anything she made, about 5 minutes after she made it, it turned rock hard. She would make a challah, and for 5 minutes, right out of the oven, it was just soft, it was delicious, and great. 5 minutes later, rock hard. But I used to tell her, Bub, I love that challah. I love it. And she would look at me, and she knew everybody used to make fun and tease her a little bit about the stuff that she used to make, and it would turn rock hard. Almost everything that she made, she used to make matzo balls, and to this day, I like a hard matzo ball, because when she made matzo balls, about 5 or 10 minutes after she made those matzo balls and put them in put them into the soup, they turned rock hard. They would drop down at the bottom of the plate just like a rock. You couldn't eat them with a spoon. You had to use a knife and a fork just to cut them, just eat them. And everybody used to tease her. And I used to tell her, Boob, I love these matzo balls. Oh, and she used to beam when I used to tell her that. And it was true. It just so happens I did like it. But she used to like also the fact that I used to like it. And I used to say so in front of everybody. When it was the challah, when it was the matzo balls, when it was the latke she used to make, when it was the gefilte fish. She used to make gribnets with chicken fat and onions and rye bread. Oh boy, those gribnets, boy, after she made them, they were hard. And you know, you had to chew on those. If you chew on that and the rye bread and the onions, oh, God, that was good. I could taste it today. Oh, 70 years of it I could taste. Boy. Anyway, lo and behold, of course, I was her favorite because I ate everything she made. And I used to love it. And I used to tell everybody that I loved it. There wasn't anything she wouldn't do for me. And whenever she made something, when she'd make strudel, I'd get the first piece. And anything she made, I got the first piece. Oh, boy. She was great. She was great. Claire and I got married. She actually visited us in Omaha, Nebraska. She came, and I think she spent about a week with us. After we got married, we didn't get to see as much of her as I would have liked. She passed away. My grandfather passed away when I was 13. He was only 65. I think today with a heart attack. Today with the medicines, he'd have lived much longer. Sweet man, nice guy. I guess I was just lucky on both sides that I had great grandparents. Loved all four of them. They're just terrific people. Really were. I got to spend a lot more time with my grandfather and grandmother on my mother's side because we all lived in the same town in Canton, Ohio. We had a bunch of relatives there on my mother's side, whereas most of my father's relatives were in Toronto and Detroit. My Uncle Charlie, my dad's older brother, moved to Detroit, got into the fuel oil business in Detroit. And he was a terrific salesman, as my father was. And he did well too. He ended up being the largest fuel oil distributor in the state of Michigan. Tremendous, huge business. Became very friendly with a gentleman by the name of Max Fisher. Max Fisher was a prominent philanthropist from Detroit on the national scene. And the two of them were very close friends. So the grandparents did a great job, had some great children, and their children put out some pretty good children. I remember my grandparents on both sides very fondly. I loved them all dearly. I guess it is. Good timing and good luck ended up being a good part of my life, and it helps to do those kind of grandparents and parents bring about a pretty good chance of their children being decent people and successful people also.
Stan, let's go back and talk a little bit about your memories of elementary school in Canton.
Elementary school in Canton. First school I went to was in East Liverpool, Ohio. I was 5 years old. I can still remember walking to that school. God almighty, I was 5. if I had it to do over again, or if I could have talked to my mother, instead of sending me to school when I was 5, probably should have sent me to the first grade when I was 6. In those days, they didn't have preschool or kindergarten or anything. I think I was the youngest kid in class. Today, I say it didn't bother me. It probably did, being the youngest kid in school. And since I was sweet and young and nice and loving and all that stuff, being the youngest, at least socially, probably didn't help didn't help much. Probably another year probably would have been better for me socially. But I remember that. From East Liverpool, I went there 1 year. We moved to Youngstown, Ohio. Youngstown, Ohio. I went to school there 1 year. I can remember being in a little play. We had a little play. I was a little brownie. And I got to play the drums, a little play we put up on stage. It's funny. I can remember that. I can't remember the school, but I remember that I played the drums. I also remember that I had a touch of scarlet fever, and I can remember my mother taking care of me in a dark room, couldn't put the lights on, because she didn't want to take a chance, I guess, on the eyes or the hearing. I came out okay, but I can remember being in that dark room for about a week or two. Came close. We lived on halfway up a hill. At the bottom of the hill was a little creek that I remember called Mill Creek. The reason I mention that is because about 50, 60 years later, when we moved here to Los Angeles, we lived in a place on Bundy, which was about a block away from where O.J. did his thing. And in that building was a young fighter by the name of Boom Boom Mancini. And one day I met him on the elevator, started talking to he and his father, and they were from Youngstown, Ohio. And strange as it may seem now, we both came from a place right next to Mill Creek. And I told him when I was 5 years old that I lived on a street. I couldn't remember the street, couldn't remember the school, but I do remember a little Mill Creek Park that was at the bottom of the hill. And he remembered that also. From there, we moved to, we lived in Alliance, Ohio for a while. Then we moved to Canton. Let me see. Canton, I was in the 3rd grade. And 2 things stand out, I remember. One was one of the kids in the 3rd grade had a birthday. Their father made the first pizzas in Canton, Ohio. At least that's what the kids said. So for her birthday, she brought each one of us a little round pizza, about that size, tomato and cheese. And we celebrated her birthday in class. Must have been 25 kids in class. And each one got a little pizza. The other thing, remember, is there was a boy whose birthday we celebrated. His father used to make those little pies, those little individual pies. And he brought a little individual pie for each one of us on his birthday. And those 2 things I remember. I also remember about a block away from our house was a little ice cream parlor. And I remember that stands out because to this day, I think that's the best ice cream I've ever had in my life. chances are it probably wasn't. And it probably wasn't that good, because we went back about 30 years later and had some, and it wasn't the same. But when I was in the third grade, boy, oh boy, that was something special. And for a nickel, yeah, I guess for a nickel, you got a double dip. And of course, we didn't have too many nickels, but every once in a while, I could get an ice cream cone. And boy, that was good ice cream. Ah, I loved it. We also lived a couple blocks away, not too far away from what is now the Football Hall of Fame. That's where the Football Hall of Fame is today. And when I got a little bit older, McKinley Stadium was right next to the Football Hall of Fame. I used to walk to the games. So it wasn't more than maybe a mile away. We'd walk. But the grade school, I think I went there the third and fourth grade. We then moved to the house that we finally spent the rest of my years in, Canton, which was right across the street from my grandmother. If I remember correctly, my dad could have bought the home for $2,000. That was the price of the home, $2,000. My dad didn't have 2,000 cents, so we never could buy the house, but that's what the cost of the house was $2,000. And it was a pretty nice house. I can't remember what he paid in rent. But anyway, I was right on the border of two schools. I ended up going to, I think it was Summit School, which was about a mile walk for me. I used to walk back and forth every day, 4 times. Came home for lunch. I think we got an hour and a half for lunch. I used to walk home for lunch and walk back to school. So that's 4 trips, back and forth, back and forth. Went to school there. Nothing really stands out except one thing. I was not a really great student. To this day, I can't remember ever taking home a book to study. Ever. Which is, god awful, really. But I don't remember bringing any home. And of course, my grades reflected that. But I was a dreamer, I guess. But I do remember when I was in the 7th grade, I think. I was a little cocky, but I guess I shouldn't have been. Well, I know I shouldn't have been. A little cocky. Got in a little bit of trouble here and there. My seat was about in the middle of the class. And our teacher, I can remember her name to this day, Miss Castile. I did something, I guess, I can't remember what I actually did. I don't think I did anything so terrible. But I think Miss Castile misinterpreted. She came back to my seat, which I was in the middle of the class. She gave me a slap across the face. I'm telling you, it must have knocked me 50 rows away. God almighty. Oh, she gave me, ooh, boy, she gave me a hit. And she took me and she put me right in the first row, in the first seat, right where she could keep her eye on me. And she would sit on that desk, on half of my desk, half the time when we were in class. And boy, I didn't make a peep from that point on. And I really don't, I can't remember what the heck I did. I must have did something wrong because she really gave me a hit. And I can remember that to this day, boy, and that sucker stung. Took all I had to keep from bawling like a baby. Let's see, the 7th grade I must have been, well, I was about 13, I guess, 12 or 13. Boy. Whew! Anything else special? We also had junior high in those days. So usually at 8th grade, we'd leave and go to high school. But we stayed at that grade school one more year because they had some of the junior high. They had the 9th grade they held at that grade school, so I also went to that school for ninth grade. I went to high school at Canton McKinley for my sophomore, junior, and senior years. When I was in eighth grade, the football coach from Canton McKinley, who was Ben Schwartzwalder, who was the coach at Syracuse and coached Jim Brown, became the coach at Canton McKinley. He came to our school and he said, everybody who weighed 100 pounds, if you want to try out, why don't you try out? We'll go put you through some tests. I think I weighed 99. So, but he still let me try out. I ended up being one of the fastest kids in the, if not the fastest in the tryouts. He wanted me to come out to try for football. I really wanted to. But the next year, I didn't really get a chance because I had an opportunity to go to work. And I got my first job outside of working for my father down at the old Pepsi plant. I used to go to the Pepsi plant, and my grandfather used to give me a nickel to put together, in those days, 24 little cardboard insertion dividers in a case that would separate each one of the 24 bottles. And for every 100 of those, I'd make a nickel. And I'd work all day there on Saturdays. All day. I'll bet you 10 hours. And maybe I make 10 cents. Big day, I make 10 cents. Listen, 10 cents in those days, you know, that's 2 ice cream cones. But anyway, when I got to high school, I remember something else. There was a couple of us guys in the neighborhood. Used to mess around together. And there was one kid, Gerald Allman. He was probably a year older than us. A little bit of a bully. He wasn't crazy about my being Jewish. I wasn't crazy about him being a Christian. And even though he was a little bit bigger than I was, we used to fight a lot. I guess I wasn't too bright because he was bigger than I was, and he beat me up about 9 times out of every 10. But when we weren't fighting, there was an old house that was about a block away from where he used to live, and we used to throw rocks and break windows, which is something you're not supposed to do. So one Saturday, when I was working at the old Pepsi plant, making a nickel on those little cardboard inserts, a policeman comes, and he wants to talk to my dad. And he talked to my dad and found out that my dad asked me if I broke the windows, and I said yes. That night, 2 things happened. I never broke another window in the rest of my life. And the other thing is I got a strapping that I can still feel to this day. And baby, no more broken windows. That cured me pretty doggone fast. Another thing I can remember is we used to go across the street, of course, and eat with my grandmothers a lot. And we used to sit around the kitchen table most of the time. And one time, I don't know, I must have been, say, about 10, 11, 12, right around there. Everybody was drinking coffee. And I wanted some coffee. My dad said, you're not going to like coffee. You take a taste. If you like it, fine. But you're not going to like it. So I want to try some. I want a cup. He said, a cup? I said, yeah, I want a cup. You guys drink a cup. I want to drink a cup of coffee. So my dad said, okay. I'll give you a cup. If you take that cup, though, you're going to drink that cup of coffee, whether you like it or whether you don't. You still want that cup? Yeah, I still want that cup of coffee. Well, I drank that cup of coffee and I didn't like it. I got sick. And to this day, I can't stand coffee. But boy, he made me drink that coffee. Oh, God. Oh, God, that was so, oh. No, to this day, anything, if it's within a block of me, I can tell if somebody's making coffee, and I don't like it. But they got a pretty good kick out of it. Everybody's laughing. That was great. So back to high school. I worked most of the time after school. My first job, I got 40 cents an hour. I worked for I think they called themselves confectioners. He had things, cigars, cigarettes, candies, all kinds of little sundries that you would sell in grocery stores and tobacco stores and drug stores and that kind of stuff. So I used to work there after school on Saturdays and made 40 cents an hour. So that was my end of my after school career. I was too light for football anyway, that was crazy. But when you're a kid, you always want to give it a shot. Anything else special?
What activities, I remember, Stan, when I first met you, first time over at the old Pepsi plant, you had an AZA shirt on.
Oh, yeah, I became president of AZA, yeah.
Tell me about those times.
Well, there was a bunch of guys we went to Cheder with, Hebrew school. We used to hang around together. And AZA was big in Omaha at that particular time. As I remember correctly, I think the first AZA was in Omaha, Nebraska. And I think, was it Sam Bieber and Phil Kletznick, I think, were the founders, or helped found, either were the founders or helped find. Were founders of helped find AZA. I became president of AZA between my senior year and my first year in college. It was less than a year when I went off to college, so I didn't really get to spend much time in the AZA. Most of the time was over the summer, and we didn't meet them as often as we did in the wintertime. In the wintertime, I think we used to meet once a week, but in the summertime, we didn't meet quite as often. I did learn to play ping pong when I was in AZA. We had a bunch of pretty good ping pong players, and I became halfway decent, interestingly enough. And I tell my grandkids now, brag, I guess, a little bit. Well, brag a lot. After I came back from the service, went back to college in Omaha, in Canton, went to Kent State. The kid who won the State of Ohio ping pong tournament was written up in the paper. His name was Bill Stringer. And we were friends, good friends. After he was written up, I think he was written up on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. I think Sunday paper. Monday, after classes, we all used to go over to the student union, which was about 2-3 blocks away from where we were going to college at. It was a secondary location for Kent University. Kent University was in Kent, Ohio. This was a subsidiary in Canton. Anyway, I tell the kids, he was taking on all comers at the student union. And of course, he was beating everybody because he was the best in the state, just won the tournament. So he and I played, I beat him. He never spoke to me, and we were pretty, not best of friends, but we were pretty good friends. But he never spoke to me after that. All I did is I beat him once. And we played one game and I beat him. Usually whoever wins, keeps the table. So when I start teaching my grandkids ping pong, and I've taught a few of them, I always tell them that story. That when I was playing my best, I also, a couple of years later, I played a kid who said he came in second in New York City. I don't know if it's true or not. I beat him pretty easily. It's hard for me to believe that he actually came in second in New York City, but be that as it may, I did beat him. So I tell the kids that they look at me, really, Grandpa? Yeah, really. What else? I did go to Kent College, where they had that trouble years later. When I went there,
I want to hear about when you met Claire.
Okay, met Claire. Well, let's see. We were in Omaha, Nebraska by then. One year, I decided to go on vacation. Oh, 1 year, my uncle from Canton calls me up and asks me if I would take my grandmother to Miami Beach for a couple of weeks, for a week or two. He wanted her to go, and I was the only one she would trust. So my dad said, okay, I'll take a week off. It was in the early years, still, tough years for us. But he said, take a week off. So I fly to Canton, we jump on a train, we take the train down to Miami, and that was the first time I'd been to Miami. I don't know what that was. Probably early 50s. So a couple years later, I decided to take a vacation and go to Miami. I go to Miami with a friend from Omaha. His name was Woolman. His folks had a grocery store. Norm Woolman. He wanted to know if I would go with him, and I said, yeah, I'll go with you. I was real close with Stu Frankel. Did you know Stu from him? Stu and I were buddies, and he had a younger brother. Is his younger brother still alive? Oh, he's gone? Oh, when did he go?
About a year ago.
Really? Stu's gone a long time. He was a nice guy. Stu and I were real close. I liked him. And he had a cousin, Arkin, Lloyd Arkin. He's in St. Louis, I think. He's still, and Doc Nathan. Did you know Doc? But did you know of him? Doc Nathan was maybe a couple of years older than you and I. He also went to St. Louis. I used to go to St. Louis and visit him at the hospital. I used to stay there for 2 or 3 days and come back home. Anyway, so Norm and I go down to Miami, and we go to the Nautilus Hotel. And Norm says, we got to get a date. I said, okay. We just got there that day. And I go out. I said, I want to go for a swim. So I go in the back, go to the pool and go on the beach and go for a swim, do this and that. He comes back a couple hours later. He says, I got a couple of girls and we go out on a date with. I said, well, okay. He says, I think he says they're at the pool. He said, I'll introduce you to them. So he takes me over, and that's when I met Claire. Claire was Norm's date. He said, I'm going to take out Claire. And the other girl was Claire's cousin. So that's how I met Claire. She was not my date. That evening, early evening before we were going to meet, we were in the lobby. And guys are fooling around with water pistols, so I had a water pistol. And as silly and as dumb as this sounds, the guys are shooting around, and I see this pretty girl coming, and I squirt her with the water pistol. It happened to be Renee. It wasn't Claire, it was Renee. She gets upset, she doesn't want to go out. So she doesn't. I get another date, and Norm and I double date. Norm is with Claire, and I'm with this other girl. We went to a club, and they had one of those South American bands, and we start dancing. Well, Norm wasn't a very good dancer, and I wasn't bad, so I started dancing with Claire. Well, we hit it off, and that was the last time she went out with Norm. The last time I went out with this other girl, and Claire and I spent the rest of the week together. And that's how we met, and we liked each other. I knew I liked her. I mean, she didn't say she liked me. I don't know if she did or I can't remember now if she actually said. But anyway, we got along pretty nicely. And I made up with her cousin, apologized. And from that point on, we wrote. I would fly in. I had to be in love to fly in from Omaha to New York every month or so. I'd fly in to visit Claire. And after doing that for a while, that got a little tiring. So that's how we decided to get engaged, and we got married. I'd like to talk a little bit about my father, whom I'm, of course, very proud of, and whom I liked. I liked my father a lot. And part of his life I deem really special. And that is, once the business started to get on its feet, and we were able to spend not quite 7 days a week, work at night and day. My dad, I think it had to be part of him, because it wasn't something that he got from someplace else. But he was a socially conscious person. He liked to join organizations, and more than that, he liked to become involved. And he did. At one time, I think he was a member of 10 to 20 different organizations on a local basis and nationally. He became involved. He made physical contributions. He also made monetary contributions. But he put in time, and he put in effort, and he became leaders and directors and presidents of a lot of these organizations, and organizations that one would recognize easily. Boys Club, Boys Town, Masons, Philanthropies, Jewish Federation, a bunch of them. And he spent a lot of time, a lot of effort. He raised a lot of money. He went to Israel a number of times. He was on a Kiwanis International a member, and he was a contributor to Brandeis University in Boston, Boys Town in Omaha, Boys Town in Israel. He's donated a lot of time and effort to places in Israel that to this day still show his name and his monument. Did a lot of good things, and in that respect, he was a good guy. And he helped a lot of people and did a lot of good things. was one organization, boys club, that was mostly, a boys club opened up a branch in the near north side in Omaha, and he spent a lot of time with a lot of the black members, and he liked doing it. And a lot of those kids that he helped to school and to college, and send them notes later on. Very touching. And, he'd never talk about it or say too much, but he did it. And I think I was one of his big disappointments in that area, because I never did follow through in the stuff, in the kind of things that he wanted me to do in that area. I'd also like to talk a little bit about my mother. In those days, she didn't become involved in the social aspect like my father did. But there was a few things that she was active in. She was active in Hadassah for many, many years, and some other Jewish organizations that the names of which abandon me right now. But she was, in her way, she was active, and she made contributions. She did some work for her, and she was always with my dad at his side on the things that he wanted to do, supported him 100%. And when they had to go to Israel and other places, she would go, and she would be a part of his contributions in every aspect of what that word means. She did say that when she goes, and even before she left us, she and my dad helped in the Bloomberg home. We have a wing out there, I believe, and something else besides. And after my mother passed away, she told us before that she would like to help the Bethel Synagogue if we could. She wanted to do it, and before she got a chance to do it herself, she gotten into a position in the last couple of years of her life where physically she was okay, but mentally she didn't have the sharpness that she had before, and wasn't able to, when I mean sharpness, she wasn't able to communicate like she normally was, or used to. But she wanted to do something for the synagogue, and after she passed away, she wanted to do it before, but after she passed away, my sister and I, in her name, decided to make that contribution to the chapel at the Bethel Synagogue, which will hopefully have my dad and her name in perpetuity. I also, as a son, can say that I like my mother, not in addition to being your mother, which there's strong feelings and should be, but I liked her. She was a nice person, and both my parents, really lucky in that way. They were good people, and that's something that the children are lucky for, and we should pass that on to our grandkids. Interesting story, when Claire and I got married, our first little house was on 99th Street, 1312, South 99th Street. Little yellow house. The guy who built the house lived right next door. On the other side of us was daughter was cis. Mother was Indian descent. Nice family. Anyway, what's interesting that happened there Claire and I were trying to have a child, and Claire decided to have our first child, whom we named Bobby Sue, Roberta Susan. One interesting story that I'd like to tell about the children, and that is the birth of our number 2 child, Tari. Claire decided to give birth in January, the night of one of the biggest snowstorm of that season, and for many seasons as I remember. I think it was about 12 inches of snow had fallen, and she decides all of a sudden she stands, it's time to go. 12 inches of snow, that's a lot of snow. So we had to shovel the driveway. And my next door neighbor came out to help us, and it wasn't early in the evening, it was late at night. And we shoveled that doggone driveway, and we had a pretty long driveway. The street in front of our house was not paved at that particular time. It was still a dirt street. And we had to go up a hill. In those days, they didn't have four-wheel drive. And I don't know if I called the police or if my next door neighbor called the police. But anyway, we got in touch with the police. The police came down and made a path for us with their car, because their car had, I think, chains, or they may have had special four-wheel drive on the police car. Now this is 47 years ago. The police made a path for us and helped us up the street until we got to center. Drove us all the way down to the hospital. Clarkson Hospital. Took us all the way down to Clarkson, where Claire gave birth to Tari. Was that the one that took about a minute and a half, or did that take longer? Anyway, about a minute and a half after we got there, Claire gives birth.
And he kept telling me, "You're not due yet. You're not
You're
due."
not due yet. It wasn't time for her to officially go, but we'll take them anytime we can get them. Another cute story is the birth of Mark, the last one. That happened during Christmas time, and Claire had to stay in the hospital another day or two, and we took Mark home, I think, on Christmas Day. So the nurses there dressed him up in a little Santa Claus outfit, and here a nice Jewish boy is taking his son home, all dressed up in Santa Claus. And I took him home by myself. Claire had to stay in the hospital another day or two. So we had a little Santa Claus baby, and we had one baby who was in the biggest snowstorm of the year. We were a little different than what normally would happen, I would imagine.
Oh, Dee Dee is the one who came fast.
They all came
They
fast.
didn't even have time to prep me.
I would like to mention about Bobby Sue and Dee Dee. Those two were really normal. Bobby Sue, normal in the sense that they came when they were supposed to come. They took about the proper amount of time. At least I got a chance to sit in the waiting room and at least open up my book and read a page or two. Bobby Sue came out, and the first one, and they hadn't prepped her yet, or hadn't cleaned her up yet, and she didn't look the right color. So I said, she doesn't look right. She doesn't look right.
Put her back.
So I put her back. She's not done. She's not ripe. Dee Dee came about the time she was supposed to come. She took about the amount of time she was supposed to come. I got a chance to read a couple pages in my book. She came out, and they had her all cleaned up. She looked beautiful, and Dee Dee came out okay. All the kids came out okay, but each one was a little bit different, and each one's special in their own way. In closing, I would like to say, even though there's probably a lot of stories that might pop into my head as time goes on, right now, I would like to mention how full and special my life has been. There's 19 of us in the direct family. My wife, whom I love dearly, and has shared all these things with me. My 4 children who are great, great, great.
And the other 4.
And of course the 4 that they married to. My 9 grandchildren. I love each and every one of them as much as it's possible for a person to love.
Whether you play tennis or not.
That's right. I guess it takes a special effort probably, and to be able to express yourself and to say how much that you care for people, and to tell them that you love them and that you care a lot about them. And we probably, as parents, sometimes maybe don't do it as much as often as we should. My wife does a heck of a lot better job about it than I do. I should do it more. I feel it. I feel comfortable with my family. I don't call them up as many times as I should. I probably should do it more. But because I feel comfortable, and because I like them, and because even though I kid about being nurturing and caring and warm and responsive and all those good things, a person should say it. I mean, you got to be verbal about some things. Let it out. Let them know. And I should do more of it. And right now I'm doing it, doggone it.
We both love you all very much.
And I don't think you can say it much better than that. That's about it.